Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Anthea from Remix Plastic, and today I'm going to talk about textile waste and fast fashion. Traditionally, fashion designers have two seasons. So there's an autumn collection and a spring collection, and they design items for those collections that are then launched on runways and catwalks and then filter through retailers down to consumers. And that's often why there seems to be a bit of a lag between what you see on catwalks and what you'd actually see somebody wearing in the street. But these days we have fast fashion, and so this is the term used for a quick transition from the designers to consumers. So it democratizes fashion in that people can instantly wear what they see on the runway. But this happens through reducing the cost and reducing the quality of the items. So then there's 52 seasons in the year. Everybody will go and buy something and then it'll be out of fashion really quickly, so they'll go and buy something else. So it is kind of like a consumerist way of consuming fashion. So most people would have gone to any shops, I won't name any, but any shops, and seen t-shirts or any other item and just thought, how could it possibly be that cheap? So how could a t-shirt cost $5 when it's made overseas? Somebody's made the fabric, somebody's then put it together as a t-shirt, somebody's packaged it up, shipped it, it's got all the way to New Zealand, it's landed in New Zealand, it's been unpacked, sent to retailers around the country and then put on the shelf. How can it cost $5? Answer to that question is that it doesn't cost $5. The fast fashion isn't that cheap. It's that other people are paying for it. So other people along that chain are absorbing that cost so that you as a consumer can go and buy a t-shirt for $5. And this has been highlighted by a campaign called Fashion Revolution, which was started after the Rana Plaza factory collapse in Bangladesh in 2013. And the factory collapse killed 1,138 people. And it really highlighted the problems with fast fashion. And so the fact that all of these workers were crammed into unsafe and unhealthy work environments, and they were expected to work in conditions that were just unacceptable. And I think a lot of people knew that this was happening because it was obviously mass production and cheap consumer goods have been coming out of China and Asian countries for years. But this incident really ignited a pushback against this kind of system. And so Fashion Revolution is a global campaign, and it celebrates a week, which is next week, so April 20th to April 26th this year. And that is a way to engage people in, first of all, acknowledging that exploiting people for fashion isn't good, and then also promoting ethical and sustainable ways of consuming clothing. And so I'll get a little bit into those details in a moment. Fast fashion doesn't just have a negative impact on the people, but it also has an impact on the environment. So for these items to be so cheap and affordable, they're often made from materials that aren't very good quality, and they're designed and made in a way that will just hold together for long enough for you to wear it while it's in fashion and then chuck it once it's out of fashion. So you're not going to have a fast fashion item for years. And with that, 75% of textiles, like clothing items that are bought, are sent to landfill by consumers. So that's a huge chunk of clothing that just goes through one person and then to the landfill. 12% are put back into the system through donating and recycling. So that's like through giving to op shops. Generally, because of the low quality of fast fashion items, they're not really going to have a long enough lifespan to circle through the system. So they are pretty much just destined on a linear trajectory for landfill. Other way that costs are reduced through using synthetic materials. And so it's much cheaper to use polyester and nylon than it is to use cotton or linen. And those materials then, they're essentially just a woven fabric of plastic. And so all of the fibres are a synthetic fibre, so they're a plastic fibre woven together to make a material, and those fibres then shed. So if you buy a polyester fleece and then put it through the wash, that'll just shed microfibres, which are just small parts of those fibres, into your washing machine, and they just go straight through your washing machine filter because they're not designed, the washing machine filters are not designed to collect those microfibres. So they'll go through your filter, through your wastewater plant, and into the rivers and oceans. And these are the most common item of plastic in the ocean, are microfibres. What can we do as consumers? So the first thing that we need to do is recognise that this is a problem. So we need to recognise that the system where we go out and buy things to stay in fashion, to stay on this like treadmill of fashion, just doesn't really work. It doesn't work for us, it doesn't work for the people that make the clothing, and it doesn't work for the environment. And it's not that you have to stop buying clothes or stop being in fashion. You just need to change the way that you think about your wardrobe. But as consumers, there's loads of things that we can do to combat these systems that exploit people and the environment. And so, like I say, the first thing that you can do is consider what you're doing, consider what you're buying, where you're buying it from, ask questions like who made it, where did it come from, what is it made from, and research brands. So you can, one of the things that I do is that I'll just find brands that I know are making an effort, and it might not be that they do it all perfectly, but if I know that they're trying and that they are in line with my values, then I'm willing to buy from them without having to look into every single item that I would be buying. So there's a really good guide that you can use that comes out. It's a report that comes out every year, and it's called the Ethical Fashion Guide. And they rank companies on different things, so like transparency in the supply chain, workers' rights, and sustainable practices. So that's a really good place to start because you can then just go and see who's doing well and who's not. The other thing that you can do is buy secondhand. And so this is pretty much what I do. I pretty much only buy secondhand stuff. And the beauty of this is that it's not only extending the life of an item. So even if I buy something from a place that I know is fast fashion, it's extending the life of that item so that it's not going to landfill when there's still wear left in it. And so I could wear it for a few times, and even if it falls apart while I own it, then it's kind of just extended that a little bit. It also shows support for secondhand over fast fashion. So by switching to secondhand, you're then not buying from those retailers that are exploiting people. So you're kind of using you're voting with your dollar, and that you're putting it into secondhand. And then by shopping secondhand, and I have found this personally, is that I save a lot of money on most of the items that I buy, and so that when I need something that I can't find secondhand, I can then afford to buy it from an ethical brand. So often ethical manufacturers and retailers will cost more than fast fashion, and that's again for all of those reasons, and is that they don't exploit people. There's nobody else in that supply chain that's paying for it. You're the one that's paying for it, and so it will cost more. And so through saving money shopping secondhand, I can then have that money to put towards ethical and sustainable products from brands that are doing really well. And so it kind of just like balances out, and you end up spending the same amount on all of your fashion stuff, all of your clothing. But for me, that's really important. Another thing that you can do, and again, it kind of depends on your personality and what you find is works for you, and what helps you be sustainable, is that you can be a minimalist. And so there's things like capsule wardrobes, which means that you have like a certain amount, you have like a small curated collection of clothing that you can combine in different ways to create a whole lot of different outfits. And so generally it's kind of just like basic items that can just match with anything. And then you've just got this huge wardrobe with only a few pieces of clothing. And with that, again, you could then buy more expensive like more expensive ethical and sustainable items, because you're not spending as much just buying stuff and tuning it through. Another thing that you can do is, if you're not quite prepared to go to that extent, and for me, I haven't done that because I really like bright, unique, kind of loud items that don't necessarily then match with everything else, and so it's harder to curate a small wardrobe. But I have the rule that there's one in, one out. So if I'm going to buy something, I have to get rid of something else so that I don't then just keep buying stuff and then have that pile of things that you never wear in the bottom of the drawer sitting there not being used. And so that's another way to be minimalist without having to go like too full on having a capsule wardrobe. And then another thing that you can do is that you can reduce and reuse. So you can reduce what you're buying, but then you can also repair stuff so that you don't need to throw things out. And something that helps with that is purchasing items that are able to be repaired. So like I said earlier, if you buy a cheap merino and then you want to repair it and get more life out of it, it just doesn't really work. Whereas if you invest in a really nice merino and you get a small hole in it, you can repair it, and that will generally hold it together because it's well made, and then you've just patched up a little bit, and that's okay. So it'll continue to be um, usable for a while. So that's another reason why investing in quality will increase the life of a garment. And the slideshow is for a workshop that I run where we then go and make some stuff. And so I've actually got some resources on these activities on my website as well. And so I'll put a link in here somewhere and you can go and have a go at that as well. Cool. Thank you for listening, and feel free to get in touch with me if you've got any questions. Definitely check out the Fashion Revolution website. Cheers. Bye.